Morning. Camera angle's a little silly. Yeah, I know. But we're going to roll with the horrible camera angle just because. I mean, who cares? We're going to be rebels. And camera angle is silly. Like, you're here for a podcast. Let's talk. And we're going to talk music today, obviously, because you're listening to a music podcast. Why wouldn't we talk music? But we're gonna be talking a couple of things. I'm really excited about today's episode because, I think it's gonna be a good one. So, minus the horrible camera angle that's beginning to mess with my OCD, but I'm gonna leave it. So that being said, my rebelliousness hopefully gonna win out on this dumb thing that I keep harping on that's driving me nuts. But we are going to be talking a couple of things. First of all, Mark Morton's country album I think is going to be absolutely amazing. Brother by him and Cody Jinks dropped. There's going to be another song by him and Cody Jinks on the album. I can't remember when we're going to be getting it. I'm going to have to pull out my phone here in a minute and look at it. But right now I'm trying to pour this delicious blackberry Dr. Pepper into my mason jar because everything tastes better from a mason jar. Even whenever it says Skittles. Maybe even more so whenever it says Skittles. I don't know. But the blackberry Dr. Pepper, if you haven't tried it, it's fantastic. But guys, like some seriously really good music dropped this week. Country wise, there's that. Listen, I don't pay attention to the Grammys at all. I happen to see one thing about Sierra Farrell though, and how she won some Americana awards, and I was like, okay, I don't know who this is. And actually, even backing it up a little bit further, I came across her album in the new releases, and I was like, wait a minute, didn't this lady win a Grammy? Didn't I see something about that? And so I looked, and sure enough, she did, and I was like, okay, well, the album cover looks, like something I would listen to. I want to do some more digging. So I saw her in her, typical garb that she normally wears, and she reminds me of a female Charlie Crockett. I gotta tell you, her music is fantastic. Keep up the good work, because that album is, it should have won Country Album of the Year if we're being honest, but record labels and such, which is what we're talking about today. I really don't want to waste any more time because I feel like I've wasted some time, but gave you some thoughts on some new music, and so we're heading in the right direction. That being said, guys, let me tell you, record labels seem to definitely be a hot topic here as of late. And why? Well, if you've been following a certain story going on in the music industry, it sure seems like everybody's out to get one guy. And it's like, okay, well, y'all are being fed the same lines. It's all sounding very similar. It's all this, it's all that, yada, 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 yada. And one of two things, or a combination of the two things, is happening. One, the guy's really good about keeping everything else in his life private, so you don't have that super big bombshell that you can drop in your, attacks on him. Or two, y'all are being fed the same script. So what is it? That being said, why I try to sound this guy out? Well, let me put it this way. Let's pull out Spotify. We're gonna look at Spotify. Okay, so the guy in question, he gets 1.3 monthly listeners. Okay, that's good. That's good. But what about the main guy that is targeting him and seemingly the center of all this? 916.4 thousand monthly listeners. Okay, so he tops that guy. Okay, so let's look at one of the other guys that threw in his hat in the ring. 669.9 thousand monthly listeners. Okay, let's look at another one. 273.7 thousand monthly listeners. Okay. Let's see who else. There was somebody else that did. I think 149.1 thousand monthly listeners. And just so you know, I'm not riding on some sort of whatever bandwagon. Because had one of them said like more listeners than his, I would have called it out. But that is Upchurch versus Adam Calhoun versus Mercules versus Bravo Gator versus Jam Wayne. Okay, why is that a big topic? Well, because there's been a lot being said and going on that, he's this, he's that, he's blah, 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 all this stuff. Okay, well, there's ridiculousness on both sides, and I get that. But the reason why this is a topic today is because, people are like, oh, there's jealousy on his side. Dude gets way more listeners than you guys a month, even if you look at the highest one of 916.4 thousand or whatever it was. Okay, so if you say that, what's he jealous of? So he called a bunch of this stuff out a while back, like over a year ago, I want to say, maybe a year ago. Okay. And, he said before that, even like a couple of years before that, like 3 or 4 or maybe better, they're going to start pulling in big name people, the record labels are, to try and, do what I'm doing. And sure enough, look who just won a Grammy for Country Album of the Year. That is not a country album. So we have all this aimed at one guy, with what being at the center of it. Well, you can say, oh, it's independent guys against independent guys. I don't think it is, because of some things that have been said. Just my opinion and just me looking at it from an outsider's standpoint. I think some record labels are at the middle of this. Why? Well, because I did some digging myself. Not in this particular thing. I wanted to expand my investigation and look outside of this box. So I looked at the story of what we have with Waylon Jennings, with what happened with him. I didn't dabble too much into this one, but it was recommended to me, so I did a little bit of looking into the Taylor Swift thing. I looked into just like, I typed in record labels are shady. I typed in record labels, doing artists wrong. And guys, the record labels are some downright lowlifes. So what I've found out is, it's even talked about in a couple of the biographies that I've read recently that I've talked to you guys about, but it's talked about in a very weird way in both of those books. But in both cases, it definitely seems like the record labels do not care about their people. It's all about money. It's all money. I mean, obviously, like I've said before on this podcast, this is a business. Like, people are here to make money. Absolutely. Same with comic books, but same with any kind of art nowadays. If you can make money out of it, whatever. But at the end of the day, the important thing, I'm like fighting a burp, so that's why I'm sounding ridiculous. But at the end of the day, the thing that matters most is the art, right? I love songwriters. I appreciate songwriters to no end. That being said, some of these guys are just there that are big deals right now. They're just a face. And ugh. But to kind of go into what I'm discussing, think about the song Are You Sure Hank Done It This Way? I mean, Waylon was about as straight shooter as they came, even amongst his outlaw friends. And I'm not saying anything negative towards any of those guys, because I'm a big fan of all of their music. David Allan Coe, Hank Williams Jr., Johnny Cash, Waylon, Chris Christopherson, Merle, George. I listen to a little bit of Willie Nelson. I'm not a huge Willie Nelson fan, but that's just my opinion. But you look at the fights and arguments he had with RCA. He had issues where they weren't giving him what he was owed. They gave him all kinds of runarounds and just some ridiculous stuff, to where he ended up getting a manager, like a different manager, or maybe a lawyer. I can't remember the guy's name at the moment. I will share the link to the CMT story, like biography video thing that I watched, that had, because it was recorded before Waylon passed, and so it was really interesting, and they had a lot of good info in there, and had like these people that were there that were a part of the story, including the guy that helped him negotiate his deal with RCA. But eventually he gets tired of Nashville in general because of what was going on in Nashville. So he moves to Texas. He moves back to Texas and starts recording stuff there, and doesn't want anything to do with Nashville. Isn't that interesting? I mean, eventually he does go back to Nashville, because we have the whole thing of, several of his family members that are now prominent people in the music industry that are, like his son included, are from Nashville and live in Nashville, or still have a lot of dealings with Nashville. But the main thing here is record labels in general are awful. They want 80% of what you make. They want to keep you in a hole, which we saw with Tupac. And then I found out something else interesting during all of my digging, and that is that they take out life insurance policies on their artists. Now, at first glance, that's not a big deal. Yeah. Covering a potential loss or whatever. Okay. But they don't use it in a proper way. Let's look at what happened with Tupac, right? For those of you who know the story, Tupac went to prison. Suge Knight came to prison, sat down, wrote up a contract on a napkin, and Tupac signed it. Okay, Tupac looked like he was living a lavish life, right? Well, Tupac eventually found an opportunity to get off of death row records. For those of you who are not familiar and you're like, what do you mean he was going to be sentenced to death in prison? No, he got out of prison, started recording stuff for Death Row Records, and we got some amazing music out of that, right? Some great art. However, Tupac's life, like real life, was not good. He was in debt. He had all kinds of issues, but it looked lavish, right? It looked that rapper lifestyle. But he found a way to get off of Death Row Records. He was going to get off of Death Row Records. Now, what if a record label has a life insurance policy on Tupac? What then? And then while investigating this, another example that came up was Neo. Not somebody I'm necessarily a fan of, but his story was very much the same way. He heard somebody else singing his song, like he was a songwriter on top of doing his stuff, but he didn't get the royalties from the song. The record label kept the songs and had somebody else sing them, and they took all the stuff. They do the same thing with masters. They try to get their hands on the masters so they can continue to make money off the royalties and everything after they stab you in the back. And so you end up with these artists who have nothing. And this happens in all genres. It stinks. In most cases, I think the best thing for a band or a artist is to be independent, like Upchurch. it's a hard formula to recreate. And do a lot of people need help? Yeah. But modern technology has really come a long way to where you can do things with very little. I mean, this horrible podcast is done on a snowball mic that I just about dropped for those of you who are listening to the audio version and not watching the YouTube version. Those of you who are watching the YouTube version, you're watching a train wreck unfold, and I appreciate you watching it. But this is done in my basement with a card table, a futon, and an iPad that won't hold any kind of storage at all. I mean, system data alone is taking up too much room to where this thing's junk. But I'm trying my best, and I'm having fun while doing it. I'm enjoying this conversation. I cannot wait to put it out there. I'm recording it on a Saturday night. This drops Monday morning. But why? Because I'm a trash man that is just trying to do my thing. I started doing these podcasts and doing the cooking videos and stuff to help push being a writer. I love being a writer. I love writing. I love telling a story. Just like these music guys that I'm a huge fan of that I put on while I write my stories, which is all about Tin Roof. That is like the epitome. Although I started thinking, I haven't done a guitarist episode in a while. And man, like, guitar is just a huge part of it, right? Guitars, drums, yada, yada, yada. But back to the main topic. Going the independent route, if you can do it, whether you're just a solo guy, like making your own beats and whatnot, or playing every instrument, whatever, throw up some foam. I don't really have any foam in here. I ought to give you a tour of the basement sometime. That'd be kind of cool. Like, this is my studio. But, people mock different studios and stuff like that. Some people use a closet, whatever. Who cares? Like, the kind of nitty-gritty stuff of it makes it even cooler, right? But, you know what? They're getting it out there. They're doing their thing. And you know who's over them? Themselves. Not a record label going, no, we don't want you to do that. That's not you, man. That's not the face that we want you to be. That's the whole thing that Waylon and all them guys were against anyways, right? The guys that we look up to, the guys that we, romanticize and pay homage to in all of our songs nowadays. Hoss, are you sure Hank did it this way? Waylon walked it and talked it. Why are our guys doing it now? They're waving dollars in their faces. It'd be hard to pass up, right? I mean, shoot. Somebody walks in and puts $1 million in my face and tells me to start doing my podcast in a chicken suit. Guess what? Ooh. Now I gotta order a chicken suit. Who's gonna stop them? Or, who's gonna say no, is what I mean to say. It's going to be a struggle, because what could I do for $1 million with my family? But with that $1 million, they got to make two, okay? At least two, before I see yet another dime. But I also owe them $1 million that they gave me. So they make two, but then I got to pay them back a third million, right? And then, that wasn't enough, so they got to make another $800K. So you see what I'm getting at? How are you supposed to get out of that? It's like car payments nowadays. Think about your car payment. Okay, you buy a car that's $16,000, but your interest is like 10% or whatever. You pay it over 60 years. You're paying $30,000 for a $10,000 car. What are we doing? The system is designed to be against us. Period. All of it. Every bit of it. It's a racket. So, I mean, you can enjoy it and have fun and do what you can, which I hope you do. But at the same time, when you can fight it back one way or another, do it. I published my books on Amazon because I haven't found a way to fight it back yet. But I know I'm getting taken to the cleaners by Amazon. I'm trying to find a way around it because it's not fair to me. However, it puts me in front of millions of people. So I sympathize and I empathize with these people that are on record labels. But how do we do it better? What's the answer? We should work together. independence, right? But if we're working together and trying to make things better, maybe I don't have the answers for this, but I got the answers for something else. I know how to make a podcast. I know how to edit one. Okay, cool. I know that. I can help that writer over there that knows how to publish independently get his podcast going. Although if he knows how to get his books published independently, he probably don't need me to tell him how to make a podcast. But I could be of some sort of use to him. I'll feed him brisket. Whatever. Let's get together. Let's talk. We can offer each other a lot of things. We can fight all of this junk. If we just stay together and if we all work together, we can make amazing music. But you know what? Not all record labels are bad. There's one record label that during my fandom, during my investigations this week, all of that I found out that, guys, they're the real deal. At least everything that I've seen. And that is Metal Blade Records. Like, it's a metal... that's what they focus on. They are a metal record label. However, they helped push the Goo Goo Dolls, a punk rock band. They've had so many different bands on their label over the years. They're friends with the guys from Metallica. Brian Nagel, I think is how you say his last name, who is the owner of Metal Blade. But they've helped the genre so much, and not just one branch of the genre. They've got deathcore guys, they've got prog, they've got black, they've got all of the different types over there. And not just like little bands. They've got Amon Amarth, they've got Whitechapel, they've got Cannibal Corpse, they've got I'm trying not to name past ones, and I'm trying to remember all the present ones. They've Metal Blade has been huge. We're gonna have to do a deep dive on them one of these days, and I can't wait to do it. I think we pretty well wrapped up this particular episode, though. Record labels are bad, okay, but we can do better. Also, Ginger's new album, with my ADD here, sorry. Ginger's new album, bump it, because it is fantastic. Still got to listen to Dream Theaters, though. So that is on the list for this week, although I got to hurry up and do it because we're going to be having more new music dropping next Friday, including Lacuna Coil's new album, which I am super anxious to listen to. Also, I think it would be really cool as we get closer to the drop of Creaker 3 to do an episode talking solely about Creaker. And I don't know, maybe I'll feel plucky one day and shoot Church a message and be like, you want to be on a podcast? Or maybe put it on a TikTok short or something and add him in it and see what happens. Because talking with the dude that made the albums about the albums would be really cool. But I'm digging the Dixielanders sound. Can't wait to hear more. It's been fun talking music with y'all. And go support those independent artists. Support the people on Metal Blade Records. Find those little niches where we can do some good for the people that make our lives better by having those being the soundtrack to our lives. It's kind of a cool thing that at different moments we think of our... This is where music is romanticized and it's so poetic, because we can think of times in our lives when certain songs speak to us most. And we even had kind of an episode on that. I'd love to do it again and be even more in depth and have a better list or an updated list of what speaks to me in particular. I'm super just happy at the moment with where this particular podcast is headed, because I'm making more posts on Facebook. We're making headway on TikTok, I think, by having the podcast actually on there. They're longer episodes, so I think they're getting less views because of that, and people aren't watching the full thing. Understandable, they're long, but at the same time, man, it is so much fun to just be doing these. What's gonna happen next is cool, because I don't know what's around the next corner. I don't even know what I'm going to talk about next week at the moment. It might be done in chicken soup. Just because saying it was super funny and it would be something comical to do. Get everybody's attention, wouldn't it? Well, I think we covered all of our bases for this week. Happy Monday. Oh, wait a minute. We didn't talk racing, did we? I don't really have a whole lot to talk about racing-wise this week. Watched a little bit of King of Hammers today. Didn't really get to watch much, but, man, racing's getting ready to really be in full effect. Oh. What if we did a watch-along for the Mint 400? Would anybody be down for that? Because that would be really cool. I know I'm going to rally in the 100 Acre Wood. Be kind of cool to tie this in with that somehow, since we have the Throwing Dirt segment. Just some thoughts. We can do so many cool things with this. Like, do a live stream watch along. Think about that. Like, how cool would that be? Like, we could throw in cooking. Like, hey, 100 Acre Woods getting ready to start. We're throwing such and such on the smoker. We could have a ton of fun with this. Think about that. Like, how cool is that we get to do things like that? It's just awesome. It's fun. But I think we've had enough fun for one night. I think I need to get to bed. Y'all are awesome. So I hope y'all have a happy Monday. Thank you so much for listening to me talk and kind of give you a little bit of a rundown on record labels and how horrible they are. And if you are a band and you are on a record label that doesn't do you dirty, stay there, hang out with them, let us know, like in the comments, that you are on a record label that's pretty awesome. And if you're an independent person, post on here so maybe people can reach out and, figure out how to do it themselves. I'm getting ready to try to do an audio book of one of the books that I just finished writing. Books. Anyways, we'll see you next week right here under this tin roof.